iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max 2 years later. Now, these phones are actually going for right around $600 to $750 used secondhand. So they've held their value pretty well, but they're down about $500. Now, if you go into a 512 gig model, you might push into that $800 range, which is still, I would say, quite a bit of money for phones that are almost 2 years old. However, these are Pro devices, so you do get the stainless steel build, the premium kind of feel to them, but they are pushing that area of an entry-level iPhone 13 and maybe even the 14 and 14 Max coming. These don't feel too much cheaper than those devices. So what do you get for the money? Off to the back, you'll see yourself, you do get a glass material that doesn't show any fingerprints. It's like a matte kind of feel, and I love it. It's great. However, the camera area does pick up quite a bit of smudging and stuff like that. Off to the edges, what do you get here? Well, you're gonna get yourself a nice stainless steel band around the edges. Feels like $1,000,000 in the hand. It's a little bit thinner, and on colors like the Pacific Blue, it definitely does show fingerprints. Now, 2 years later, I can say that after the 13 Pro and Pro Max came out, feeling a little bit more bulkier, a little bit more heavier than these models right here. They feel a little bit thinner, but still retaining a premium feel. The cameras also don't stick too far off the edge, so they don't look as bulky as the newer phones. And it's rumored that the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max are going to get 48 megapixels, so those are going to be even bigger than these cameras. So these are slightly more sleek in my personal opinion here. But overall, what do you get on the front? Well, you're going to get yourself that same classic notch design, and this was before they actually thinned out the notch. We are going to pill cutout this year, but this was before they thinned it out. So these is the same notches you've seen on the iPhone 10 days. So you will retain that here on these iPhones over here. Overall, I would say they still feel very premium, and they still feel like, $800 phones for sure. But there's some areas that make it, I'm not sure if it's going to be worth that right now. So this is the problem with the Pros. They still cost quite a bit of money even when they become used, so they don't really seem like good deals for a very long time. And so a lot of people just don't even care and skip out the older Pros and just go on to a new iPhone 13 or a new iPhone 14, for example. All right, so what about the displays? Well, you are looking at OLED panels here on both of them. Again, the notches do cut a little bit into the content, more noticeable on the smaller Pro, but 2 years later here, I can tell you the displays feel fantastic. Most phones are still offering up OLED panels, and these still get to 800 nits of brightness, which is still brighter than some competing phones out there. So still similar to an iPhone 13, and I'm guessing that Apple's going to retain this type of display for the 14 and 14 Pro Max. I don't see them going to anything much different, because these are already very bright, very beautiful, and they've already made them before, so it'll be easier for business. Also, no promotion on here, no 120 hertz, and some people love it. Some people really, really strongly want that on their phone, a smoother display. And at this price point, they know they can get a smoother display, which makes this a really tough sell right now, a really tough recommendation, because $800, you're for sure going to be able to get some kind of phone with that type of panel. And if the 14 and 14 Max offer a 90 hertz or a 120 hertz, these are going to be even more irrelevant, actually, because that's just going to be a better feature for the same money. Overall, beautiful displays, just lacking that 90 hertz ProMotion display. And I actually thought that Apple could have had this, at this time. It just seemed like they could have already had this on these iPhones, because a lot of phones already were having this feature when the 12 Pros came out. So they really drug their feet on this feature. And if you're looking for these used, still amazing displays. You just have to be able to accept the fact that you're going to be dealing with Apple's smooth 60 hertz, but not their ultra smooth 120 hertz ProMotion. Software wise, it's an excellent reason to get one of these. They still have 3 to 4 years of updates. So these phones, even being 2 years old, have enough updates to keep you moving, well into the future, as long as even some current brand new Android phones. So definitely very good software support. You're not going to be behind if you decide to get these for several years to come. So don't even fret about software. It runs fantastic on both of them. And speaking of performance, since we're in the area of performance software, stuff like that, these have Apple A14 Bionics with 6 gigabytes of RAM on both. So you are getting the same type of RAM that you would get on the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max, essentially giving you no real major issues with going back through your applications and reloading and stuff like that. So these are going to perform very fast, very well on the day-to-day. Even the A14 Bionic is faster than a lot of Android chips out there. So performance, software, they're just still really good. Okay, battery life. Now, I'm sorry if I'm giving you battery anxiety. We have 19%. We'll make it through the video. The battery has been pretty good on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. This one giving you easily a day, but it really didn't stretch more than that. The 13 Pro Max and the 11 Pro Max are my favorite all time for battery. The iPhone 12 Pro though, not a super interesting phone here when it comes to battery life. Having 5G and not a really large battery cell, this one just kind of wasn't my favorite. It definitely didn't make it a full day with heavier, camera use and stuff like that. But an average person should be able to get through the full day with either. Just don't expect some amazing, overly impressive batteries with either of these. They are just good enough. That's the best way I could describe it. They're good enough. They're not overly impressive. They're not underperforming, but they're good enough. All right, when it comes to cameras, we are looking at triple 12 megapixel cameras. That's so similar to what we've seen on the iPhone 11 Pro. However, they got a little bit better here. They brought HDR video and settings here, so you can do Dolby Vision and stuff like that, 60 FPS. Pretty good here overall, I would say, especially in the video department, with the iPhone 12 Pro Max being a little bit better with the stabilization of the video. So these are amazing cameras, don't get me wrong. The thing with them though is that all the iPhones have pretty amazing cameras now, and the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max improved on these quite a bit. So these are just really good iPhone cameras, and if you're looking for these phones, I think you're going to be super happy with the results and stuff like that. But do keep in mind that now, with the upcoming 14 and 14 Max or Plus, whatever they want to call it, if those are in the same price range, they're probably going to have even better lenses than these. And remember, the standard iPhone 13, its main lens is still better than these. So if you wanted to just get a 13 at a similar price, because these are around the price of that, you won't get that telephoto zooming, which bothers a lot of people, which would be the reason to get these, but you'll still get a better lens. And so it's kind of tough to recommend because Apple just has good cameras on pretty much all of their iPhones. You would just really want to have the zoom to get these ones right here. Now, when it comes to audio performance, they both actually performed quite well. Stereo speakers on both of them, so we didn't have much issues in this area. 2 years later, I could recommend either here. Both are very fast to connect to things like AirPods and such, but not going to be, headphone jacks on these phones. That's been gone for a long time. And I want to hop over to one of the more important areas of these phones. These were some of the best introductions to 5G because the iPhones before just didn't really have amazing mobile performance and amazing signal strength in my experience. Samsung was really crushing them. And then these phones came and it was game over. Like now it was back to equals. So these were one of my favorite year in terms of that. So these iPhones, in conclusion, they ushered in new designs. They don't have a terabyte of storage. So if you're doing 4K, you're going to max out at 512. But they ushered in these squared edges. They were the introductory to what we see now on the iPhone design language. But overall, are they really worth it? And I'm having a tough time recommending these just because of the price of them. People still want $700, $800, $900 in some cases for these phones, and that's a very tough recommendation. So you could cop this at around $600 is probably a really good deal. I think anything higher than $650, I would think twice about that. But overall, these are still very compelling phones, and 2 years later, they've held up very well. The battery life is good enough, but the price is still throwing me off just a little bit. The only recommendation I have for you is that if you guys want a pro feeling iPhone, like it feels like a pro device, and you don't want to pay thousands of dollars for these newer pro devices, and you just don't like how the aluminum edge, colorful, regular line of iPhones look, these will be your best options right now. Other than that, I think there's better options out there, to be quite honest at this point. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let's discuss it. Which one of these would you go with? Would you just skip these out together? Let me know down below. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.